Driving around in this 2023 Porsche Cayenne obviously makes me think about my Porsche Macan and doing a comparison with that, mainly because I own one. And even though my Porsche Macan is 7 years older than this Cayenne, the beauty with Porsches is they don't really change that much from year to year. And that's the same with any Porsches. Look at the 911s, the Caymans, the SUVs, it's the same story. Porsche has a formula that they've perfected, and so they just keep enhancing it and fine-tuning it year over year. But generally, there's no sort of massive overhaul or change in design or the way the car is. And because I own a Macan, in this video, I'm gonna do a comparison of what I own today versus this one and give you my opinion on which one you should buy. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Clearly, the Cayenne is bigger than the Macan, bigger proportions, more space inside, just a bigger SUV overall. In the looks department, I give the edge to the Porsche Macan mainly because I like that it's a little bit smaller, it's sportier looking, has a more car-like look and feel. The Cayenne, on the other hand, is more of a standard SUV. It's boxier, it's bigger, but to each his own when it comes to looks. The front end is pretty similar to the Macan, although it's a little bit beefier and more masculine on the Cayenne. Even though this is a base model with 335 horsepower from a V6, I like the look of the dual tailpipes. I'm glad they decided to go with this design back here. I like the design of the taillights on the newest Cayennes. I like this long strip, but you also find the same thing on the newest Macans. Generally though, I really love the way these Porsche SUVs look, whether it's the Macan or the Cayenne. They just stand out on the road and look different from the competition. Under the hood, you have a turbocharged 3-liter V6, about the same power as what I have in the Macan, but not quite as fast because this is definitely a few hundred pounds heavier. I did a video on my Porsche Macan where I talked about the back seat space, and that's really the biggest downside with the Macan. The fact that your passengers back here are just not going to be comfortable, that's absolutely not the case in the Cayenne. The Cayenne is tailor-made for carrying around people, and everybody that's in the back seat, they're going to have plenty of leg room. They can spread out, be comfortable. You can comfortably fit 3 adults back here. And that's really the appeal of the Cayenne over the Macan. Up front in the driver's seat, you get a very similar feeling as you do in the back seat. You just have a lot of room and space, especially compared to the Macan. In the Macan, it's a tight fit. It feels much more snug around the driver. It's kind of like a glove. It fits you perfectly. In this one, there's just a lot more room to move around and spread out, and it's a wider vehicle, so you have more separation from your passengers. So this is, from a comfort perspective, the way to go. I wish these grab bars right here came in the Macan. You actually need them more in the Macan than the Cayenne because that's the car that you want to throw around, not this one. This one you want to drive in a more civilized, normal manner. Other than having more space and the fact that the center screen is bigger and the center stack is wider, it's absolutely very similar to the Macan. You get a very similar feel. My Macan is obviously 7 years older than this one, so I have all of the different switches, and the interior of that car is kind of dating itself. In this one, it's completely modern. You have this black gloss finish. All of these buttons in the center stack are haptic touch. They got rid of the switches, and you have a nice big display in the center where everything you do in the car is through this main menu and these buttons in the center stack. The haptic feedback here works pretty well. You definitely have a feel for it, and it also makes a clicky noise. So the functionality I'm happy with. So the interior technology is updated, but if you compare a 2023 Macan to the Cayenne, this section right here is going to be very similar, if not the same. The Macan display is a little bit smaller than this one, but other than that, largely the same. The problem with this gloss black is it captures all of your fingerprints. If you were to do a crime and get in this car, nobody would have any trouble finding your fingerprint. And also there's complaints of this center area getting scratched up easily, so I don't know if this was such a good idea. I think the switches are better. But the center display infotainment is very functional, easy to use, and it's a big update over what I have in the Macan. I think Porsche did a really nice job of making this intuitive and simple to use. You can adjust your climate control settings through the main menu on the display, or you can use the controls that are in the center stack. The drive mode settings you can change pretty easily. You can pick normal, sport, individual. The chassis height, you can make it low or high or terrain for off-roading. And then if you select off-road, you can change your surface type, gravel, mud, sand, snow. So they give you a lot of options to go crazy off-roading with this Cayenne. The rear view camera is nice, the resolution's great, and you have 360 views. I won't lie, I wish my Macan had some of this nicer technology, but then again, I only paid half the cost because it's used. A new Cayenne, different story. The steering wheel is very similar to what I have in the Macan, but the dash layout is different. You have the one analog tachometer in the center, and then the two on the sides are digital. And you can easily change the display by moving this knob up or down so you can make it into a map, which is, I think, kind of cool, combining the two separate circular areas. Same thing on the left side where you have another knob that you can turn to change things on there. Besides being more spacious in the Macan, I would say the interior refinement is slightly more upscale than the Macan. They're both very similar, but you get the sense that Cayenne just went the extra mile on some of these things, and so it feels like it's slightly above the Macan. So this 2023 Porsche Cayenne, it's a base model, but it's still got 335 horsepower, and surprisingly, it's actually not that slow. But this one still gets up and goes. It's still Porsche-like. It's still got the good driving and handling characteristics. But the nice thing about the Cayenne is it's bigger inside. You feel more spacious, it's more comfortable. It's also a step up in terms of luxury. And so if you're thinking about road trips or you need to take a lot of people in the car, maybe your family, then the Cayenne is the one to go with. It's definitely more comfortable than the Macan. The ride quality is better in sport mode, and one of the things that's really struck me about this is how quiet it is. There's really not a lot of wind noise or road noise. It's very insulated, so luxury-wise, the Cayenne is definitely at a higher level. And unlike my Macan with the super fast PDK, this one just has an 8-speed Tiptronic transmission, which still shifts fast, but it's not lightning quick that you'd expect with the PDK. So if you're gonna compare the Macan with the Cayenne in terms of being a driver's SUV, then the Macan is better. First of all, it's smaller and lighter, so it's more tossable, a little more agile than the Cayenne. But the fact that this is a Porsche is not lost whatsoever. You're still very much aware of all of the handling and abilities that a Porsche comes with, and all of that is in the Cayenne. The one thing that I'll say though is the Macan gives you a much more snug, driver-focused feel, as if the car kind of wraps around you. In this one, it's more airy, it's more open. It's not quite as focused on the driver. It's definitely much more about comfort and luxury, and that's what you get with this Cayenne. But then that fact is clear. The Cayenne market and the Porsche Macan market are two different types of people because there are two different types of SUVs. If you need something bigger, more spacious, more luxury oriented, I just don't see how you could do better than the Cayenne. If you're considering like a BMW X5 or an Audi Q8 or Q7, you're not gonna get the same kind of driving feel as you would with this Cayenne. But the Cayenne, of course, is a lot more expensive. I mean, a new 2023 Cayenne like this would have been in the 80s. But in terms of all-around package, the Cayenne does do everything really, really well. Whether you go with the Porsche Cayenne or the Porsche Macan, you really can't go wrong. These are both fantastic SUVs, and I absolutely love my Macan. But when it comes down to it, if you're more of the selfish person like I am and you care more about your own experience, the Macan hands down is better because it's more of a driver's car. Practicality is kind of a secondary thought. And I like cars that are smaller. If you happen to like more nimble, agile cars, then the Porsche Macan is the one for you. The Cayenne is much more geared towards passenger comfort, space, practicality, better for road trips. And if you care about your passengers and how much space and comfort they have, then the Cayenne is the one for you. So if you're a more giving person, more generous, then go with the Cayenne. But if you're more selfish like me, then the Macan is your choice. By the way, if you do end up buying one of these, make sure to buy them used. Don't buy these new. They're so expensive, $80,000. The Cayenne's gonna be even more expensive than the Macan. Do what I did, find a used certified pre-owned, almost as good as new when it comes to warranty, and save yourself tens of thousands of dollars.